Everyone, and welcome back to Grandstand Sports Data. Today, we're breaking down our NFL Week 7 betting recap. We're going to go through the power ratings, the benchmark model, and then also some fundamental factors that we've been tracking throughout the year and how they performed. So, if you're serious about finding an edge, stick around because this is where the numbers will meet the real results. All right, so let's jump to the benchmark model results. You can see in week 7 it was only profitable on one bet type. That would be the over-unders or the totals at 8 and 7. So, profitability or the unit profitability of units at 0.28 units. Only good for a 1.9% return if you played every single game on the board. The other two bet types did not end up being profitable when it comes to the spread or the money line. Even though the money line did go 9 and 6, you can see if you played every game on the board, it would have not been profitable. Moving down to the model picks for the entirety of the 2025 season, you can see the totals still profitable at 0.87 units. The other two seem to be a theme here, right? Not necessarily profitable. We do, in terms of the model picks for the money line, we do break that down into a win percentage and to form our edge, but we do it more in the 10-year, which we show you in our preview show. So make sure to subscribe to Grandstand Sports Data to see those preview shows where we walk you through basically the steps on how to make the selections throughout the week. All right, so let's take a look at the benchmark model and its results. So, we've been gauging it on the money line. As you can see, went 4-4 in this past week in week 7. I was down 63 units, 0.63 units, sorry about that, and down 7.9 in terms of your portfolio. So on the year, it's still fighting to get back to profitability. 14 and 22 is not the best of records, especially when you're talking about on the money line and the odds that we're looking for, usually within those minus. It's jumped across the board because of the 5-year track record. So it was at 1.160, 165, now minus 163, minus 162. So it's always been in that range because of those 5 years. All right, so let's jump to the money line systems that we went over in that preview show. And as you can see, we had the Dallas Cowboys on the rest and divisional dogs that we touched on. They were at a plus 115, just making it through that plus 114 cut that you see here. And that's just based on the longevity of this is win percentage in terms of when you break it down into odds. Dallas ended up winning their football game outright. This going 1-0 on this certain system. The next four are just going to be basically a Rubik's Cube of favorites on a high total, 620-mile rule, and then coaching. Then also this one's going to have the Madden sprinkled in. Well, the teams that satisfied that were the Bears, Chargers, 49ers, and Lions. And as you can see, they went 3-1 this past week. So just the Chargers not fulfilling their end of the bargain. But basically the key performance indicators that you see in terms of your win percentage, your units in terms of profitability, and then your rate of return all remaining the same for these four systems. Now jumping over to the spread systems, not too bad on their end as well. So San Francisco covered the first two, which would have been favorites on a high total mixed with that rest, and then having the better coach in their matchup according to the Grandstand Sports Data coaching model. The next one would have been rest and contrarian play. So all you're doing is San Francisco would have more rest than their opponent, and then they would be the contrarian play. So getting less than 30% of the bets. So that actually cashed out as well. We touched on rest and divisional dog on the last slide, but if you just played it on the spread, still would have been profitable for the Cowboys, just not as profitable as on the money line. Getting plus money, you would have made more. Favorites on a high total mixed with the 620-mile rule that actually did pretty well on the spread this week. Went 4-1. As you can see, you'd been up $2.64 for every $1 bet, so pretty huge there. Then the final one, we have 620-mile rule mixed with the contrarian. It went about 500 in terms of its win percentage, and it was down 27 cents for every $1 bet. So going 3-3, you got to remember when you're placing these against the spread, you have to do better than 52.4% in terms of your win percentage, or else you will not be breaking even. All right, so let's jump to the market in week 7 and how it performed. You can see on the contrarian side, and these are the teams that are getting 30% or less of the tickets. They went 3-4 against the spread, so not necessarily good. You would have been dropping over a unit there. And then they went 4-3 on the money line, which was almost dropping nearly a unit. So remember, they probably had a little bit of favorites or some underdogs that did not hit, and that's the reason for not having profitability on a higher than 50% win rate. Moving down to bet percentage, this is basically the public, right? This is the number of tickets that a team would have when they're bet on them. So talking about 8 and 7 this week, it was the same thing as the money percentage side, which is this tells us where the actual dollars landed. So basically, there was no sharp side this week. Basically, public action met the sharp side. I'm using all of these in quotations because you really couldn't tell this week, but you could see that the public was, if you just want to label the public as the bet percentage, they actually had not too bad of a week this week. And just like at the bottom, usually what you want to do is you want to spot the teams. So that sharp side row, you want to spot the teams that are getting less tickets but more money. And that's where that sharp side, and there was none of that. So all the teams that were picked by the public were also picked on the money side as well. All right, so now let's take a look at the results from the actual plays that we walked through in the preview show. So on the spread side, you're going to see a 2-2 record, down about very close to 20 cents on every $1 bet. Then you can see on the money line side, 2-0, hitting at a 100% win rate. I want to say in the last 2 weeks we've gone undefeated, so we're up 1.63 units in terms of just that metric alone. Now, when we start to layer in the bankroll, though, you can see that the spread gets a tad bit worse because you remember you put a little bit of weights on each of these. But if you move on to the money line side, you actually doubled the profitability, very close to doubling it. So not too bad there. So not too bad in terms of the picks and how they've been coming out. We'll show you the long-term results or the season-long results in the preview shows. That's where we kind of give you the, I would say, long-term recap as long as with the picks. Well, the long-term recap, remember, helps us develop the picks. All right, so after week 7, the benchmark model basically has the Rams jumping over a few teams to that number 1 spot. Then we have the Colts, Lions, Texans, and then the Chiefs. So from those top 5, I'd have Rams, Lions, and Chiefs as Super Bowl contenders, with Indy as maybe one tick step below. So I am starting to, come around on Indy a little bit more, but I do believe that they may be this year's Minnesota, to where they get to the playoffs and they're going to really ask a lot from their quarterback, and he can't do too much. So right now he's in a great system, but we know how that works out in the long term. Another one is, I don't really believe in the Texans. They have a really, really outstanding defense. Uh, I mean, a great defense, but they barely have any offensive support. And as you may know from watching our channel, balance wins championships, not necessarily one thing or the other. You need a little bit of both. So that's what we try to preach here. Remember, our power ratings videos that we did last year, maybe even the year before, in the top right hand corner, you would see differentials. And in those differentials, we wanted the color codes of red and orange. Basically means that you're a top 10 team in all the differential stats that weight what? Balance for a team. Well, what we would see over a long period of time is those teams that were in the color codes of orange and red, which means ranked in the top 10, those are the teams that most likely make it to the Super Bowl. And the teams that we see that keep having those are the Rams, the Lions, the Chiefs, and then I will say, if you go further down the board, Seattle and Green Bay. So those are the teams that have those color codes. Those are the teams that you should be looking at in the long term. I would even go as far as to say Buffalo as well, as they're creeping in a little bit closer. I want to say that it's maybe their turnover differential that's not in the top 10 just yet, but they are eking closer to that spot. Okay, so if you watch this video series basically every week, you know this is a good opportunity to look at these teams and kind of see where you want to go as a sports bettor, right? The teams on the left they're making the most money so far in the league on the spread bets. What do you want to do in this instance? You want to look for some fade opportunities. You want to look for the market kind of overpricing these teams because they're making so much money so far that they will come back to earth. Well, you want to do the opposite on this other side. You want to see some buying opportunities from these teams, which I can almost see three right now. The Ravens, Bills, and Packers, that eventually, as the season goes on, they will start playing better. Same thing with the Texans, too. I think that their defense is going to keep them in a lot of football games, so you may want to look at some opportunities with Houston and see if that offense can just get a little bit better. I think if they had an average offense, just an average offense, they would be a top 10 football team. Now let's move on to the betting profit and loss in terms of the money line side. Well, we got the Pats, the Colts, the 49ers, Panthers, and Buccaneers. They are the top of the league in terms of for your wallet. You got to remember that it's for your wallet. Uh, just like on the last slide, you want to look for some fade opportunities for this team, meaning that the market and the public are going to overprice these teams, and you can find some opportunities on the other side. Now, you want to go vice versa on this side. So the bottom teams that are not making money, you want to look for some buy opportunities because the market will be doing the exact opposite, right? If they're favoring these teams, they're going to be coming lower on these teams. So Baltimore, obviously, I would say this is going to be once Lamar gets healthy, but will the market overprice that? Will the market underprice that? So obviously you can look at them, but some of these teams in terms of the money line, you can look for some buying opportunities. Right, so after week 7, the market has kind of shifted again, right? Buffalo basically falls back because of inactivity, and then good performances from both Kansas City and Detroit will propel them above them. But after the top 3, the odds really have started to stabilize, right? As basically as the year progresses, you will see that the market will stabilize. You'll still see teams that are like, tend to pop up, one or two teams, and one or two teams that fall down as well. So but you'll start to see much less volatility, than what we saw in the early part of the year. So as the season goes on, you're going to have less of those. Are they a contender or a pretender? The market will really stabilize and know who's the contenders and who are the pretenders. So thank you guys for watching Grandstand Sports Data. If you got value from this video, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and then drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts or what you'd like us to cover next. And don't forget to share this with a fellow bettor who could use the edge, right? So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.